50 years ago, the United States Army Air Force arrived in Britain to join the fight for freedom in World War II. And in Norfolk, the skies were filled with the sight and sound of the B-24 Liberators of the 2nd Air Division. And now in 1992, as part of the 50th anniversary celebrations, the Memorial Trust of the 2nd Air Division, United States Army Air Force, who administers the unique and wonderful 2nd Air Division Memorial Room in the Norwich Central Library in Norfolk, decided that the tribute would not be complete without a return to Britain of a B-24 Liberator. And thanks to the Confederate Air Force, the dream became a reality. And this film is the story of that unique and emotional transatlantic flight. We can never thank the Confederate Air Force enough, the B-29, B-24 squadron, and that wonderful crew of Diamond Lil for all their support. They were truly superb friends in every way, and you could not wish to fly with a better crew. And what a remarkable link it was with history to discover that their Liberator AM-927 should have served with the Royal Air Force in 120 Squadron in 1941, but for the landing accident on her delivery flight. And so in 1992 to be escorted over the Atlantic by the present-day Nimrods of 120 Squadron was another real link with history. So now let's go to Meacham Field in Fort Worth, Texas, and join the crew at the beginning of this exciting journey. So here she is, that grand 51-year-old lady, the Liberator Diamond Lil of the Confederate Air Force, all now ready and waiting at Meacham Field, Fort Worth to begin her long flight over the Atlantic. And let's now go on board and have a look at the flight deck. Welcome on board, Diamond Lil, and climbing up through the bomb bay, we now enter the cockpit and admire it from the flight engineer's position. On the left you can see the captain's seat, and on the right is the co-pilot's position. And as you can see, this grand 51-year-old lady is extremely well equipped. There are the flying controls and the flight instruments, the engine throttles, the mixture and the pitch controls. And I just can't believe that in a few days' time I'll be flying this grand old lady. Now you can have another view of Diamond Lil, this time from the cockpit hatch. And you get a wonderful view of this grand 51-year-old Liberator from wingtip to wingtip. And here are two of those great Pratt & Whitney engines. 1,200 horsepower each, and they're going to fly us all the way across the Atlantic. And now the crew assemble, ready for those crew photographs. And here is Colonel Ray Crottinger. And Colonel Alan Strickland now assembles the whole crew together, ready for the photographs.
Going on this, there were the original 5 of us that started all this. We'll take that, we will then add 2 girls on it. We'll then add you into it. Then we will add David Hastings. There you are, David.
He's hiding behind the camera.
And then we will add the rest of the riders into it. We'll take 2 or 3 pictures of each one of them, but we'll all be over here at the nose of the airplane. So we'll do it that way. And Okay. David Hastings, your name.
Oh, geez, yeah.
Isn't that better?
Hey, that's it.
Everybody on the crew, if you have any problems, and especially if it's flight planning.
And now we start the flight planning for that unique transatlantic flight. And we're led by our senior aircraft commander, David Hughes, who is a Delta Airlines captain. And there is Sam Mangrum and Henry Brand, 2 of our flight engineers.
Have you got a number on
The
code.
day one, number 12.
Okay.
No code.
Well, that's good code. I like it. Code I recognize.
We're gonna fold them out and then just kind of, you leave them in the clipboard.
I got a clipboard.
We'll have a clipboard in the cockpit for the clearances, and I have some little stickies when we're cleared to 6,000 feet or so, or 5,000, just stick it on the dash, and then I know we will have an altitude report reminder.
This is the lake.
And so here is our transatlantic route, retracing one of the old wartime ferry routes. And leaving Meacham Field in Fort Worth, we now head north on the 4-hour journey to the big international airport of Minneapolis-St. Paul, and the home of our main sponsor in the United States, Northwest Airlines. And then the next day, it's out across Canada, over Lake Superior, crossing Hudson Bay and into the Arctic to land at that tiny little airport of Equilit in Frobisher Bay. And then after the night stop, it's out across the Davis Strait, over those awe-inspiring mountains of Greenland and the Arctic ice pack, over the Denmark Strait, to finally land in the evening at the NATO base at Keflavik in Iceland. And then the transatlantic crossing, escorted by the Nimrods of 120 Squadron, to land at Kinloss. And then finally, that 2.25-hour flight down to Norwich, to bring Diamond Lil back home to Norfolk. And now, all the crew sign those unique Diamond Lil photographs that are going to be of such value when we get back to Britain. This is the vital bit. Henry pre-flighting. How's it looking, Henry?
No problem.
Monday, June the 1st, and we prepare to leave Meacham Field on a very foggy morning. And this is one of our flight engineers, Henry Brandt, now completing a very thorough pre-flight. And none of us on board can really believe that we're about to start on this unique and historic flight all the way back to Britain. One foggy morning. Ray Crottinger, another pilot.
And company's right.
Got it. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and I'll just
Right, can I grab you for a sec?
Sure.
And as you can see, Henry Brand continues his very thorough pre-flight check. But of course, it's got to be thorough. We've over 4,500 miles to go. And also here to see us off is the squadron boss. And here's another of our aircraft commanders, Ray Crottinger. And very shortly, we'll be meeting some of the veterans of the 2nd Air Division Association, including Jordan Utah from headquarters and Jeff Gregory from the 467th at Rackheath. But before we do that, here's the job you have to do every time before you fly Diamond Lil, and that's pull those propellers through, all 8 blades, and those edges are sharp.
What am I going to say? I'm going to say I wish you a pleasant trip. I wish you a safe trip. It was a pleasure to have you back here in Dallas again.
But I would like to wish you a wonderful trip over, David. And when you get there, please say hello to all of our friends, the Lomaxers and the Traffords and everyone concerned with the marker memorial at Rackheath. We were delighted to put it in there and so happy that it's working out very well.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right.
20 minutes and we're off.
20 minutes and you're off. Hi. Well, I'm glad to see a Scotsman shaking hands with a limey.
Anyway, great to see you.
Yeah, it's been great to see you, and we hope you have such a wonderful flight, and I just wish I was going with you.
Yeah, great.
All right?
A bit better than the Scotland accent.
He does it better than me.
And so now we say a fond farewell to all those 2nd Air Division veterans who came to see us off and wish us well. And David Hughes now gets all the crew ready for the interview by the television cameras and the radio reporters who've come to see the start of this unique flight.
We've got a couple of BBC guys back.
I'm the pilot in command, aircraft commander of the B24. I'm from Irving, Texas. I've been flying for about 36 years, longer than I can remember. This airplane I've been flying since 1984. On my left here is another aircraft commander, Ray Crottinger, from Fort Worth, Texas. He's also our maintenance officer with the B-24, B-29 squadron. I'm the operations officer with the B-24, B-29 Squadron. Next, we have Al Strickland, also from Fort Worth, our public information officer for the 29-24 Squadron. And also our main person has really put this all together, our tour coordinator. And we have Sam Mangum from Waco, Texas. Seems to be a lot of Texans around here, but that's the way we are in Texas. He's one of our flight engineers. And Henry Brand from Preston, Minnesota. I'm the one that's not a Texan, but I won't hold that against him. And we have Dave Tell around here, right here from Euless, Texas. He's our design engineer. He's the one that helped us approve a lot of the modifications we've done on this aircraft. So, Ray, I'm going to ask you, are you ready?
I'm ready to go.
Okay. You want to say anything?
No, I'm ready.
How about you, Al? Are you ready?
Why are we still here?
I don't know. Let's go. We're supposed to leave at 10, but CAF time we'll leave on Monday. And today is Monday.
I have to say my wheel landing is a little bit...
It's 10:30 and we start engines now. Number 3 first, as she has all the hydraulics on board, followed by number 4, number 2 and number 1. And outside there is one of our flight engineers, Sam Mangum, acting as fire guard. And on board is a very excited Liberator crew. We really just can't believe that we're now on our way back to the United Kingdom.
They do. You have fire by my hand.
And as we taxi out, the tears in the eyes of the many 2nd Air Division veterans bring a lump to our throats and make us all realize just what this unique flight is all about. Not only here in America, but also for the thousands of people waiting for us back home. And now just listen to the lovely sound of those Pratt & Whitneys at full power as David Hughes lifts us off from Eacham Field on this foggy morning. And we are on our way to England. We soon climb clear of the cloud and head north now towards Minneapolis St. Paul. And Colonel Alan Strickland now comes aft to brief us on our present flight position. And with him is one of our girl scanners, Colonel Star Stone. Up front, the crew are now settling down to the route flying with David Hughes in the left-hand seat and Ray Crottinger in the right. And everything is running well and we're absolutely on track. And here's a good view of our number 2 engine when viewed from the flight engineer's position. And moving back from the cockpit through the Bombay and all our stores, you have a good view of this very happy crew of Diamond Lil. We're now on our way at last.
Hello, Dave. Hi. Great to see you.
And Henry Brand and Kathy Martin now study the wartime pilot's notes on the B-24 that I've brought over from England, just to see that we do know everything about flying the B-24, although I don't think there's any doubt about that with this Confederate Air Force crew. And it really is a lovely afternoon now here, high up over the United States as we make our way towards the big international airport of Minneapolis-St. Paul. And what a fine view that Liberator tail fin makes. (14:15) now, and we commence our descent into the very busy international airport at Minneapolis-St. Paul. And nobody is allowed to fly by at this very large airport, and we are no exception. So it's gear and flaps down, and we complete our landing checks, ready for our arrival here at Minneapolis. But as we line up on finals, we are amazed now to hear the tower ask us to complete a fly past. So it's gear and flaps up, and David Hughes then brings us in for that fly past that we will never ever forget. And as we sweep over the field, we are amazed to see the thousands of people waiting to greet us. With our flypast now complete, we now establish ourselves downwind for landing. And the gear is lowered, and we complete our final landing checks. But what a flyby that was by David Hughes. Certainly this is going to be an arrival that we will always remember. And here comes the gear in true Liberator fashion. And what a landing indeed. We have arrived. And as we taxi in, the tower now clears us past the passenger terminal, down towards the headquarters of Northwest Airlines. And there's hundreds of their employees waiting to greet us. And Northwest provide us with a wonderful cake as well as a greeting from the Vice President of the airline. What an arrival indeed.
I knew I'd get a picture of you having the cake, Tom. I knew I'd get a picture of you having the cake. What a welcome from Northwest.
And also at Northwest, our links with history begin once more, as waiting for us is that wartime Liberator pilot, Al Dexter.
Well, what do you got to say, Al?
Well,
it's
it's
happened.
a pleasure to be
It's
here
happened.
with my old buddy David and the guy who's going to take care of me in London. I might be there the rest of my life if he doesn't get me on a flight.
That's good.
What a welcome indeed by Northwest Airlines here at Minneapolis.
And also here to greet us is that wonderful girl from Northwest, Jane, who's done so much to help the project.
Come on.
I'm going to tell your wife something about it.
Ah, well, she'll see it now.
Oh, I really will.
As well as two very happy crew members.
Yeah.
This is a lot worse than that.
I have converted him to margaritas.
Thank you.
And that evening, our wonderful hosts, Northwest Airlines, entertained the whole of the crew of Diamond Lil to a welcome dinner in the airport Hilton Hotel. And what wonderful sponsors Northwest Airlines have been. It really is great. And we even get Al Dexter to yarn about what it was like 50 years ago.
So, early morning now.
Oh, 7:30 now, and we're all back out to Diamond Lil on this really lovely morning at this big international airport. And there's still hundreds of Northwest employees here just wanting to have a look at this very famous old lady. But she certainly looks wonderful on this perfect morning here at Minneapolis, St. Paul. Also out to say farewell to us this morning is our wartime Liberator pilot, Al Dexter.
Well, you've got my card. You got my card?
So,
Let me have one.
now, what else you got to say about the flight this morning, Al?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. You guys are lucky I'm not flying this. You want to get off the ground.
And so here it is, the new with the old at Minneapolis International Airport. And we can't believe that we're shortly going to be starting up on the next leg of our journey, possibly one of the most exciting ones, into the Arctic Circle. And the crew manifests are signed, and then we're now almost ready to start engines. But of course, we still have to do that regular job every morning of pulling those propellers through, and there's Henry Brand and Ray Crottinger. But what a wonderful sight Diamond Lil makes on this lovely morning here at Minneapolis. And at 0900, all the engines are running and we prepare to leave. But Northwest have been really superb hosts. And as we taxi out, the tower now clears us ahead of all the very busy airline traffic at this huge international airport, whose passengers are amazed to see a Liberator taxiing by. And back aft, our flight engineers brief us on the emergency procedures.
I want you guys to run like the clappers. Look out if they ring.
If it rings, follow. I got news for you, you ain't going to be late.
Well, if something happens, don't everybody run. Allow Dave and I to open the 2 escape hatches.
Right, fine.
You know,
Follow you, yeah.
yeah, because chances are that nothing's going to happen, you know, of course, but if something did, you've got to, we'd all get out if everybody
Stays
was calm and cool. And,
absolutely. So the only person I can't rely on is
Okay, guys, if you take a look, watch the wheel. This one over here in particular.
And that is David Gell, one of our senior flight engineers, who is himself a senior FAA engineering examiner. And this crew has taught us so much about flying.
Okay. Now, as it warms up, that'll come out of it, but at the moment,
we'll be up in the air before it comes out of it. You had 58,000 pounds sitting on you overnight. No, thank you.
And so now we taxi out to the active runway for our first max weight takeoff of the trip, all 58,000 pounds with our full fuel load of 3,000 gallons on board. But once again, David Hughes makes it look all too easy. And just listen to the lovely sound of those 4 Pratt & Whitney engines at full power as we depart from Minneapolis on this lovely morning. But we certainly used an awful lot of the runway, as you'll see in a minute. Once airborne, and Henry Brand now displays his wonderful Lancaster t-shirt. And it's also time for our first cup of that wonderful Northwest coffee, and the airline have given us some superb food to see us over this Arctic leg of our journey. Once again, we can't thank the airline enough. And now at 7,000 feet, we get our first view of Lake Superior, and Diamond Lil is pairing along on this lovely morning. Once more up front, the crew are settling down to the route flying, with Ray Crottinger in the left-hand seat and David Hughes in the right. And everything is in the green, and Diamond Lil is performing superbly. And here is Sam Mangrum, our flight engineer for this leg of the route, keeping a very close check on everything. Alan Strickland, our senior navigator, is also keeping a very close check on the route. And very shortly we'll be coming off to announce to the whole crew that Diamond Lil has left the United States for the first time in her history.
At 09:31:15 Central Time, AM 927, crossed the Canadian border, leaving the United States on a trip to the United Kingdom, 51 years late, but it has now left the United States. We will get there.
We now also pin all the charts up in the aft cabin, so those of us off watch can study our route over this very wild and barren part of Canada. And as you can see, there's very little habitation or human life up here. It really is a very isolated and lonely part of the world, but we're all excited. Now we get our first sight of that lovely Hudson Bay, and the weather's not at all bad. We're still running in between the cloud layers, but the temperature is already beginning to drop. And our Liberator's tail fin makes a great sight up here. I bet they haven't seen one of these for many a long year in this part of northern Canada. We now get our first sight of the Arctic ice, and the temperature is now down to -15 outside. But Diamond Lil is still performing extremely well, but the ice is quite a unique sight for most of us who've never seen it before. The cloud is now beginning to build as we approach the eastern edge of Hudson Bay, but we're still managing to run in between the cloud layers, but beginning to pick up just a little bit of airframe icing. And beneath us, the ice is now beginning to thicken in this very barren part of Canada. From the ice, we now enter another unique part of Canada, the frozen tundra area. And it's also time to start on that very wonderful Northwest Airlines lunch. And what a great meal it was. Here is yet another different view, and this time we're over the frozen tundra with its frozen rivers and lakes. The scenery is really unique. Now we're out of the cloud and into that very lovely area of the ice floes as we start to approach Frobisher Bay. And what a wonderful afternoon it is up here in Diamond Lil, 9,000 feet above the Arctic. And everybody's studying those ice floes to see if we can sight a polar bear, but nobody has had any luck yet. And what a sight our tail fin makes in the Arctic sunshine in this afternoon. Some thin cloud starts to form now, not as forecast, as we cross another range of mountains. It really is a perfect afternoon now, up here at 9,000 feet over the Arctic. And that cloud is still beginning to worry us a little bit, as we're just hoping it's going to have dispersed by the time we start our approach into Equilit at Frobisher Bay. But it's still a lovely afternoon to be flying. And up front everybody's busy, but it's quite cold now as we can't stop a draft coming in through the nose, and the outside air temperature is now down to about -18. And there's a nice view of our number 2 engine from the flight engineer's seat. And back aft, everybody's straining to get their first view of Frobisher Bay. And some of the rock formations up here in the Arctic are quite unique and very beautiful indeed. 16:30 now, and we start our descent towards Equilit. And I really have enjoyed flying Diamond Lil this afternoon. You start the approach into Equilit over the frozen inlet leading into Frobisher Bay, and the gear comes down in our normal fashion. But this is certainly a wild and barren part of the world. And it looks very cold indeed. So we're now established on short finals for the main runway at Equilit, and just watch the lovely landing that Ray Crottinger makes. But as you can see, there's not much here to the little town of Equilit. How about that for a greaser? Now parked at the refueling point at Equilit, and the charming Canadian customs girl comes on board to complete all the formalities. And we've arrived at the end of our first leg.
We left you in Minneapolis.
That's where you left. That's on 12.
Yeah. Minneapolis.
I forgot that.
And you're all US?
No, we've got...
And outside it's time to get the cameras out, but my word, is it cold up here. Especially for Sam Mangrum out on the wing, completing the refueling.
Frobisher Bay, and it's freezing.
And now we have a chance to stand back and admire Diamond Lil in this late afternoon in the Arctic. And what a flight it's been.
Crew are now having a look round as we picked up a lot of ice today. So, aircraft commanding engineers checking Diamond Lil. And here we are in Frobisher Bay, almost to the Arctic Circle. And what a flight it's been today. It's been unbelievable.
And she certainly makes a wonderful sight, Diamond Lil, out here at Equilit in the Arctic at Frobisher Bay, at the end of the second leg of our journey to Britain now. And what a trip it's been. And here's the crew. There's David Hughes on the left, our senior aircraft commander, and Alan Strickland, our senior navigator, and behind him is Colonel Henry Brand. But a very happy crew indeed.
Got you, Alan. David. Got you, Alan, at last. Revenge.
Well, that's my revenge. We're going to have some more fun.
That was a super day. It's fun every day.
You got to drive now.
I know. What about that?
Well, did you bring your logbook with you?
Are you going to trust me again?
Well, we don't know.
Oh dear, that sounds bad.
You didn't do anything bad this time. You did real good.
Thank you.
So you'll get when we get to Norwich. I got your logbook.
Yep. You can sign me out as PUT.
You sat there for a while.
Oh, thanks, Al. That was fabulous. It really was.
And out on the wing, Ray Crottinger and Sam Mangrum are still completing all the final tasks of the refueling. But there she is, another look at that lovely old lady here at Equilit in Frobisher Bay. And what a wonderful day's flying we've had. It really has been super.
I guess you didn't want to come in.
Now having refueled the old lady, we have to taxi her away from the refueling point and down to the parking apron where she's going to spend the night. And we all feel very sorry for her, as we've just heard that the temperature tonight is going to go down to minus 15 degrees. But just enjoy the sound of those 4 Pratt & Whitneys as we taxi away. Now they have a very neat control tower up here at Equilit, and certainly the Canadian air traffickers have been extremely kind and helpful to us, and we're still being photographed. As you can see, there's not much here at Equilit except snow, rock and ice. And is it cold? And once we've parked the old lady and shut her down for the night, we'll then be making our way back to that control tower and to await our crew transport to the Discovery Lodge, where we're going to spend hopefully a warm and comfortable night. But what a wonderful aircraft and a superb crew. They really are great.
Where's Dave? There's Dave. Right. Not a comment from the captain at all.
This is my drink for the day.
Thanks for getting us here, Dave. Great.
We're going to be heavy drinkers.
Yeah.
You Texans have disappointed me, I've got to say. I thought you were all sort of root beer and gin and whiskey.
Oh, no.
Wrong! They're all wrong, you see.
Margaritas.
Oh, margarita.
But I haven't seen you drink much at all. I'm glad to
Wasn't
say.
here the night before.
49 bars, it said.
How many?
49. One under 50. 6,000 people. 49 bars. And an indoor radio.
If you can't find it there, you didn't want it anyway.
You wouldn't know it's summer.
Is this summer?
Yeah, this is summer.
Gosh, I mean, your suntan.
And so we all enjoy a good supper, and then everybody turns in early, ready for the challenge of tomorrow. 0900 now, and we now join up with Diamond Lil, who's been towed into the specially heated hangar here at Equilit, a very vital requirement after having spent the night outside in minus 15 degrees. The warm-up lasts over 2 hours, and it costs the Confederate Air Force a fortune, but it has to be done. But Diamond Lil looks really good, and we're all now very excited about starting on this next leg of our journey over the Arctic into Iceland. And here's Colonel Alan Strickland.
Here he is.
Good, how are you?
Fine. All looking good?
Oh, excellent.
And there's another very good vantage point of Diamond Lil. All now ready and waiting. Sam Mangrum and Henry Brand are just fixing a very small problem with the cowling on the number one, and then we'll be ready to be pushed out and start on the next leg of our journey. But Diamond Lil is really looking absolutely superb this morning. And once again, there's Alan Strickland.
There he is. See if we can pan up to another vantage point in the hangar at the top where we can get a good shot of that lovely lady, Diamond Lil. 10 o'clock. We're now in the hangar, getting ready to go, and she's all warm.
So there it is. It's at 10 o'clock now, and we've completed all our flight planning, checked the Met, and everything is looking good for this next leg over the Davis Strait and into the Arctic. And the whole crew is very excited now. And as we taxi out, we're still being photographed.
Oh, hey guys, those things are dangerous.
That's what they're photographing us.
Our brief hold now to wait for Hercules to clear the runway at Equilit, and then it's our turn to be on our way again. And as you can see from the windsock, we're very lucky this morning. We've got a good 20-knot wind on the nose down the runway, which is going to be very helpful, as we've yet another max weight takeoff to do at 58,000 pounds with our full fuel load of 3,000 gallons. So just listen once more to that lovely sound of 4 Pratt & Whitneys at full power as David Hughes lifts us off the runway at Equilit. Greenland and Iceland, here we come. And the gear comes up in its usual fashion, and you realize what a wild and barren part of the world this is. Summed up so well by that Canadian radar controller who, as we left his zone, said, "You guys are on your own now." And now on this very pleasant morning, we now settle into our climb up to 9,000 feet and heading towards the Davis Strait and Greenland. It's mid-morning now, and we have the coast of Greenland in sight, and the scenery is superb. But the outside air temperature is now already down to minus 23. But Diamond Lil is performing so well on this lovely morning up here in the Arctic. Then, as we approach the center of Greenland, we began to have problems with our number one engine, noting an increase in cylinder head temperature and an increase in the oil pressure. And then suddenly, as we crossed another range of mountains, we noticed that number one engine was now shedding oil. So the decision was taken to shut the engine down and feather the propeller. And we also had to make another decision. Do we turn around and fight the headwinds all the way back to Equilit, or do we carry on 3 over Greenland into the NATO base at Keflavik? And not content with one problem, we now have another, as unforecast cloud stretches up now to our own flight level, and we begin to accumulate quite severe engine and airframe icing. And Colonel Alan Strickland now comes aft to brief the crew on the emergency.
Oil temperature, slight decrease in pressure. It appears, based on what we have here, we may have got a clogged up oil cooler or whatever. We're not sure. It does not appear it's anything other than that. We thought maybe it might have been a cylinder, etc., but the temperature came up very slowly. Finally got up to a point where we had the engine pull back quite well, trying to get it to cool down. It didn't cool down. And when Sam noticed the oil temperature had started to come up some more, and we went ahead and shut down number one. We discussed the alternatives, namely on where can we get repairs done, where's the best place for us to do. We are not required to immediately return to Equilit. By any regulations, we are required to proceed as discretion of the pilot in command. The cockpit crew has discussed it. We decided to go on into Keflavik. We feel there that we can get the best chance of getting repairs made on the aircraft, and if it is what we hope it is, that it's only an oil cooler, we have an oil cooler on board. It'll just be a matter of a few hours to change the oil cooler, and then we'll be back on our way. What we do request that everybody keep their seat as much as possible. By doing this, we've lost about 15 knots of ground speed, and it's a lot more sensitive to moving around through the airplane. So when you move, one move, come back to your seat, and do it that way. We're not worried. Actually, the rest of everything else is working fine. We do have sufficient alternate airports that we can fly to, even with 2 engines. So we're not worried at all about going on and whatever. Again, with the back at Equilit, repairs there are possible, but it would be it's a lot more difficult there to work than it would be at Keflavik. So that's why we decided to go on. Again, we hope that it's, I believe it's a relatively minor problem, but one that can be fixed very quickly.
And we now break clear of the cloud. Diamond Lil settles down well to running on 3. And so our 2 flight engineers, Sam Mangrum and David Gell, can settle down back aft for a well-earned rest. It's also time now to enjoy a hot cup of coffee and a late lunch. But that was quite some experience, losing the #1 engine over the center of Greenland. But what a joy it is to fly with such an experienced crew from the Confederate Air Force. And Colonel Alan Strickland now comes aft to brief the rest of us who are off duty on our position now over the Arctic ice pack in the center of Greenland.
Right now we're about right in here. Next thing we've got to get, we're at 11,000 feet. There's some mountains that we're going to cross over down in here that are 9,100 feet. So we'll be about 2,000 feet above the ground as the closer becomes the land.
And we're amazed to find out that we're now going to fly by very close to the site where those B-17s and P-38s are buried in the ice. What an amazing coincidence for us on this transatlantic flight on Diamond Lil.
9,000 feet that we're actually going to cross over. So we'll be about 2,000 feet above ground when we cross this point right in here. This will be the highest ground that we'll come across in the whole trip. From that on point, then we go on in and down. We're only making about 150 knots ground speed. We're going to stay at 11,000 because of the one shut down. We're not able to climb all the way to 13. It took quite a while just to get to 11, but we're at 11. One of the things that slowed us down was that those clouds back there. We had to turn on carb heat to keep the engines running, so that reduced us to about a net 1 foot per minute climb or somewhere around that. So, but now we are at 11. We've got everything. You know, as we picked up some ice out on the propeller that shut down. There's a couple 3 inches on the leading edge, not thick, but a band about a couple 3 inches wide on the leading edge of some ice. We should be knocking that off here pretty soon as we get into drier air. Other than that, we're just trucking along and making it work.
Steady now at 11,000 feet. You realize how barren and featureless this central part of Greenland is. And David Gell is still enjoying that rest. Now we're back into the wonderful scenery of the icebergs, the mountains, and the ice flows. And it really is a wonderful afternoon up here on board Diamond Lil, heading back home towards the United Kingdom. Once more the cloud begins to form beneath us, but it's not coming up to our flight level at all to worry us. And everybody is now enjoying yet another hot cup of coffee. And we now approach those awe-inspiring mountains on the east coast of Greenland. And what a sight they are, but certainly this is not the place for a forced landing. And we also begin to see the beginning of what is going to be a very lovely Arctic sunset. Now we get our first view of the Denmark Strait as we cross the east coast of Greenland, with its wonderful icebergs and beautiful mountains. And we begin to get just a rough idea. It must have been like 50 years ago to limp home on 3 engines. But at least we've no hostile fighters or flak. Only a very lovely Arctic sunset. We're now halfway over the Denmark Strait and the clouds beginning to break up well. And to our surprise, there's not the sign of a single ship or fishing trawler anywhere. Only that very lovely Arctic sunset. Back aft, Alan Strickland and the crew are still yarning about that very exciting time when we lost our #1 engine.
And we shut an engine down over Greenland to make sure that we needed it
outside, that Arctic sunset just gets more and more beautiful. Now at last we're talking to the NATO base at Keflavik, and we start our descent. And as we approach the tops of the cumulus clouds, we get a last look at that wonderful Arctic sunset. Who else has seen a Liberator's tail fin against that background? It's unbelievably beautiful and a memory that will last us forever. And once through clouds, the whole crew now searches for that welcome sight of the coast of Iceland. So here it is, that sight that we've all been waiting for, the coast of Iceland. And the crew can now relax, except of course for David Hughes and Ray Crottinger, who've now got to land on 3 engines in the rain with quite a savage crosswind. Now the gear comes down and we establish ourselves now on long finals for the main runway at Keflavik. And just watch this landing that David Hughes made. It really was quite unbelievable. How's that for a greaser on 3 engines in the rain with a crosswind? You won't see many landings like that in the whole of your flying career. And as we run down the runway, there's all the crash and recovery vehicles, keeping a very watchful eye on Diamond Lil.
Now we've got 5,000 feet.
Oh, we're going to backtrack.
Just there, on your left.
You know, we still have another mile of runway, so.
And as David Gell remarked, we've still had a mile of runway left, but just look at the amount of water that's lying on this runway and peritrack here at Keflavik.
The temptation is all.
And as we taxi in, we are overjoyed to see the Nimrod of 120 Squadron, which is waiting for us to escort us over the Atlantic. And we just hope there's nothing too major wrong with our number 1. But it's great to be here, and we just wonder where the US Navy is going to park us now on this very busy NATO base.
Yeah, they're going to take us down to that hangar, aren't they? Direct.
And as we swing round, it looks as though we can see Flight Lieutenant Steve Renison of 120 Squadron waiting for us.
171, the field elevation.
And there is Steve Renison,
There he is, great.
the guy who's done so much work towards this project, and also the boss of 120 Squadron, Wing Commander Mitch Sleaze. And now we can have a chance to look at our number 1. And then all the crew are paraded in front of the television cameras and the radio reporters. And I gather it's quite an unusual occurrence to have a B-24 Liberator land here on 3 engines. And the US Navy were really super, and very soon Diamond Lil had been pulled into the heated Orion Squadron hangar. And it was everybody down to work now to find out just what was wrong with our number 1 engine. And there's Henry Brand and Sam Mangrum working hard. But as soon as we checked with the oil screen, there unfortunately were the traces of the metal, and we knew that we had a major engine failure. So nothing for it but to work all night and get that engine off.
Very successfully off.
And this is the next morning. As you heard my live comments, we worked through the night and that engine is now off. And what friends the Orion Squadron have been. They really have been super. And there is that offending number 1 engine that gave us all the problem over Greenland, sitting on the hangar floor. And it really is a great joy to fly and work with a team from the Confederate Air Force where every member of the crew is a qualified engineer. What a super team they've been. And there's all the pieces, the propeller, the cowlings, and all the other bits waiting to go back on as soon as our replacement engine arrives. But poor old Diamond Lil, she does look sad with that engine missing. And while waiting for the engine, we take the opportunity now to clean Diamond Lil from nose to tail.
Give us a thumbs up.
There's Henry Brand and Ray Crottinger hard at work now, getting the new oil cooler up and getting ready on all the other accessories behind the firewall. But an awful lot of work still to do. And as you can see, it's not an easy place to work, and you can certainly bark your knuckles, as I found to my cost. And there's all our spanners all laid out in the right order, ready and waiting now for the arrival of this new engine that we're expecting just after lunch today on Monday.
That's the old oil cooler.
And
the new one is now back.
You heard me say there's the old oil cooler, which has now been taken off. And the new one, there it is now in position. So we're trying to get as much done as we possibly can before this engine arrives. And it's all looking good. And there is that actual oil screen. And if you look closely, you can see the shiny bits of metal that told us we had a main bearing failure on that number 1. And there's our senior aircraft commander, David Hughes, working on the carburetor of the number 1 engine. So that too is ready to go back on as soon as this engine arrives. But this is very much a team effort. Monday afternoon, and there is our new engine, delivered by a massive C-141 Starlifter of the US Air Force. And those are the super US Navy press relations officers, and what friends they've been. And there's a very happy crew now.
So there it is. What are your comments, Al?
All right.
All right. Everybody's looking a lot happier.
Sure is nice to see you.
Sure is.
And so there it is, and we start work now to unpack and get it ready for lifting. There's Ray Crottinger and Henry Brand now getting the engine all ready for lifting, and the US Navy have very kindly offered to come and provide the crane for us. And they really have been great friends. And here's Sam Mangrum with our lifting frame. And as well as helping us on the engineering side, the squadron have been feeding us too, and they've been great. And here we are in that lovely mess hall. What friends they've been, and $1 a meal. That can't be bad value.
You better ask the guys who are doing it. It's pretty impressive to me.
Oh no, we just told him not to do that, didn't you? We're about to get it on. In another hour or so it'll go on.
So after 2 hours, amazing work. The crane now comes into position to lower the engine and hopefully put it on the aircraft. By golly, they've worked well. They really have worked brilliantly. And there it is.
So it's Tuesday afternoon now, and there it is. The engine is now being lifted back onto Diamond Lil, and as you can see, we're being helped once again by those wonderful engineers of the Orion Squadron. They really have been great friends, and as one of them said, it really is a real joy to work on a round engine. But they've worked through the nights with us and have been such great friends.
They've been tremendous help. Here she goes.
And that US Navy sergeant certainly knew how to maneuver that crane. And so with one final push from Ray Cottinger and Henry Brand, our number one engine is now almost back on. And during the night, our aircraft has been zapped by a little Dutch flag, and it must have been the Dutch Orion that night stopped here yesterday. And now it's time for the crew to take a well-earned Coke and just a few minutes rest before we get back to work, because we're aiming to have everything complete so that we can do the running checks and the flight checks later on this evening, Tuesday. And there's a happy crew. There is Sam Mangrum. In about 4 hours' time, we hope to be pushing Diamond Lil out to get our checks all complete. So at 23:30 hours that evening, on the Tuesday, we had now completed all our checks, refueled Diamond Lil and pushed her back into the hangar. And at 0200 on the Wednesday, a very happy and tired crew retired to bed. 0800 now, and we've had another a US Navy breakfast, and we leave the Transit Air Crew quarters. Join up with the Nimrod crew in the hangar from 120 Squadron, and then Diamond Lil is pushed out, ready to start the last leg of her journey all the way across the Atlantic. And both crews report to the US Navy for the flight and the MET briefing. And it's all looking good. So it's 10:30 now on Wednesday morning, June the 10th, 1992, and both the Liberator and the Nimrods prepare to leave the NATO base at Keflavik. And this is the boss of 120 Squadron, Wing Commander Mitch Lees, now beginning his taxi down to the active runway. And we're so glad on Diamond Lil to know that we're going to have this escort over the Atlantic on this longest overwater leg of the journey. But we can never thank 120 Squadron enough. They really have been tremendous friends for the whole of this exciting project. Now we leave the coast of Iceland on this really lovely morning. And none of us on board Diamond Lil can really believe that we've achieved the dream of bringing a Liberator back home to Britain in this 50th anniversary year. And our Nimrod escort, captained by the squadron boss, now closes up to starboard. And it just seems impossible that 51 years ago this Liberator AM927 would have been flying and fighting with 120 Squadron here over the Atlantic, but for her landing accident on the delivery flight. So we're bringing Diamond Lil back to the squadron after 51 years. And this is real history indeed. And it's a lovely day to be crossing the Atlantic. And just look who's joined us on board Diamond Lil. Flight Lieutenant Steve Rennerson has exchanged the Nimrod for the Liberator. And is he enjoying it? And up front it's now my turn to fly the old lady once more. And what a super aeroplane she is to fly. Entries in the logbook that will last forever. And Ray Crottinger enjoys my efforts to hold height and heading as well as maintain formation with our escorting Nimrod. But it's a really wonderful morning. And what a lovely sight those Pratt & Whitneys make from the left-hand seat. Something I never thought I'd ever see in my flying career, especially having met the 2nd Air Division in 1944. Never thought then I'd fly a Liberator over the Atlantic. Everything is nicely in the green as we maintain station with our escorting Nimrod out to starboard on this really lovely morning to be flying the Atlantic. halfway over the Atlantic now, and the second Nimrod from 120 Squadron arrives. And they're carrying all the international press and television on board. And the media asked him to come close to us, but we didn't think he would get that close. And our senior aircraft commander, David Hughes, keeps a very close eye on things. The press and television certainly got some very lovely photographs of Diamond Lil that morning, and it was really great flying by the squadron. And the photo session over, the Nimrod now peels away to port. And also, Ray Crottinger has some comments to make about that very wonderful piece of formation flying.
Well, when you see the guy in close, you sure don't want to lose any altitude or gain any when he's tucked in that tight.
Great, Ryan.
And back aft, Steve Renison is now being interviewed by the television to talk about what are the differences between flying a Nimrod as compared to a Liberator. And of course, Steve has now become the only current pilot in the Royal Air Force to have flown a B-24, another milestone in the squadron history. But Steve has certainly deserved it, for he's been such a wonderful liaison officer for the whole project. Both the Nimrods from 120 Squadron now formate on us to starboard. And what a wonderful escort they have given us over the Atlantic. It really is superb and a tremendous welcome back to Britain. And the worst is now over as we crossed the coast of Scotland. And we can't believe that we've crossed the Atlantic in Diamond Lil. And we now start our descent into Royal Air Force at Kinloss through the rapidly building cumulus clouds. But that was some experience. Now the press Nimrod has now left us, and Wing Commander Mitch Lees closes up to starboard as we prepare for our run-in at Kinloss. And this is going to be, we hope, a real tribute to not only the squadron but also to the station. And who can ever forget that wonderful fly past at Kinloss? It was superb. And so now we're on short finals for yet another of those wonderful landings by David Hughes. And what a greeting the squadron gave us, complete with our own Piper. And so now we have a chance to thank the crews of 120 Squadron and also meet the Jaguar pilots who are to escort us on the last leg of our journey. What a trip.
And how did Kinloss look to you?
It looked quite similar.
And as we leave, we've also two more members of 120 Squadron on board. They must be keen, but I suppose not everybody has the chance to fly in a B-24. And we taxi out now at the beginning of the last leg of our 4,500-mile trip, all the way back to Norwich Airport. And Ray Crottinger now prepares to lift us off the runway at Kinloss, and just listen to that lovely sound once more of 4 Pratt & Whitneys at full power. And as we turn south, we're asked to do a fly past at Royal Air Force Lossiemouth. And now we're offered a military radar clearance all the way back to Norwich, which is absolutely wonderful, and we soon settle down at 9,000 feet on this really perfect evening to be flying. And up front, Ray in the left seat and David in the right are enjoying this military clearance and the flight back to Norfolk, and everything is running well. And then they arrived, that final tribute from the Royal Air Force, as the Jaguars came out of the setting sun and formated on each wing. And what a greeting 41 Squadron gave to us. Certainly the picture in the mess at Coldershall has now come alive. It certainly is. Welcome home, Yank.
Oh, they got the photo shoot with them as well.
So we now had a formation that is unique and will never ever be repeated in history. And all of us on board Diamond Lil realized how lucky we were to take part in this wonderful evening as we head home to Norfolk. What a sight we made on that evening. And as we crossed into Lincolnshire, a lone tornado asked for permission to join the formation. And we welcomed him. And our call sign was Rebel Formation. And once again, we had another unique formation.
The home of the B24, that's where she belongs.
And what a very excited crew now as we sweep into Norfolk. It's unbelievable. And what an escort we've had from 41 Squadron. We could not have had a finer escort after flying the Atlantic. And up front now we prepare to descend to 1,500 feet so Norfolk can enjoy the sight and sound once more of a Liberator. And we try and fly over as many airfields as we can on that run into Norwich. And now the formation tightens up for that fly past at Norwich that we'll never ever forget. And so we arrived out of the setting sun, with it twinkling on our wings, to that wonderful arrival at Norwich Airport. We'd come back home. After Norwich, we did a fly past at Coldershall to thank 41 Squadron. And now up front, we complete our landing checks, ready to arrive back at Norwich and fly over Attlebridge on the way back to land on 09 at Norwich Airport. And the gear comes down for that final landing at Norwich. And what a welcome you gave us. We'd never seen so many people at our airport. It was wonderful. And as we taxied back down the runway, we just couldn't believe that we'd brought Diamond Lil to Norwich.
Good day. Hello,
And as we taxied in that evening, there was many a tear on board Diamond Lil. For we just couldn't believe that we'd achieved the dream of bringing a Liberator back home to Norfolk in this 50th anniversary year. as a real tribute to the men and women of the 2nd Air Division, United States Army Air Force. And so Diamond Lil has now come home after 51 years. And we now have one very happy and tired crew.
Hello, Christopher!
Yeah. Lovely. That shows that his head. Okay.
And the words of Tom Eaton, the chairman of the Memorial Trust of the 2nd Air Division, now touch us all.
To their hearts, the hard years of war, and the B24 in particular. We're so happy to have one of them back here this evening and to be with us for the coming weeks. It is a nostalgic occasion for those of you who remember Norfolk and the Liberators in the war years. The Lord Lieutenant himself remembers 1,000 or more darkening the skies over Norwich as they set out on mission after mission. We owe our freedom to their work and all that they endured. And, ladies and gentlemen, you know, sad though it was that they did their mission this time is a few days late. The fact that an engine went wrong, that they were held up in Iceland, went, in my opinion, to underline the hazards of those who flew these ships in war years, not just of the enemy, but the physical hazards and the mechanical hazards that went with that campaign. And in welcoming everyone this evening, let us remember those hazards, how much we owe to those who flew the Liberators and worked with the RAF to secure our freedom. And let us rejoice tonight in welcoming our friends from across the Atlantic and all they have meant to us, and I hope all we mean to them in war and peace over 50 years or more. Welcome to Norwich, to Norfolk, and to make today at all.
Colonel Alan Strickland now responds on behalf of the Diamond Lil crew.
Confederate Air Force and all those people in the United States who once came over here to help you with the little problem that was here. We do thank you for this fabulous arrival. When we go out and work on these airplanes many, many hours, sometimes we wonder if anybody cares about what we do. David Hastings had told us, you're going to get a good arrival when you arrive in Norwich. They said, okay, David,
on homecoming, so I'll be brief. I've really got to thank just one of the many sponsors, and obviously the one I've got to thank is that wonderful crew who answered the plea of the Memorial Trust in bringing a B-24 back to Norfolk. I must admit, as a pilot, you couldn't ask to fly with a better crew, and we do owe the Confederate Air Force a tremendous debt of thanks for doing all the hard work, coming, I've lost count how many thousand miles we've gone, but as I say, they really are a super crew, and I think we should show them our thank you now. Something in the Memorial Trust that we were delighted with was something I've got in my hands here. I won't unroll it, but when you see it, the words are superb. We're very conscious in the Memorial Trust we enjoyed the friendship of the United States and the 2nd Air Division in particular in the war, and we feel it's essential that the friendships we enjoyed should be enjoyed by the future generations. And we were very touched indeed when we were planning this whole project to have a letter from a Norfolk Scout group who is going out to the United States with a very touching comment that we are renewing old friendships. Could our flight be used to build a bridge of new friendships across the Atlantic? And in the Memorial Trust, we are delighted, in conjunction with the Heritage League of the 2nd Air Division at the United States Army Air Force, to have flown a greeting all the way across the Atlantic in Diamond Lil. And it's now my great pleasure to hand it to the first of the Takeoff Scout Group, who are going off to Fort Worth very shortly. Nigel.
And none of us will ever forget the warmth of that greeting you gave us in Norwich that evening, and how wonderful it was to have our Liberator pilot Al Dexter back on board Diamond Lil.
Where's my bride? I'll see you later.
And now we have a chance to talk to Al Dexter, back on board a B-24.
Well, this feels like when I was an instructor because I'm in the wrong seat. I used to sit over there.
But how does it feel, really?
Well, this is fabulous. You know, the amazing thing is that so much of this really and truthfully looks familiar. And I had wondered if it would, you know.
So long since you really sat in one.
1944.
You mean you haven't been to an air display or been sitting in
Well,
one?
I went 2 years ago. They had, or a year ago, they had one at St. Paul Airport. But I didn't get in it very long, if you remember the story.
Be careful.
And I would say it's goosebump time.
Yeah, goosebumps, I'll tell you. It's the old, I don't know how to say it.
How many hours did you fly, or didn't you ever add them up? Did you know?
Oh, in this one, I was trying, somebody asked that the other day, and after I answered it, I thought about it later, and probably, I don't know, 750 to 1,000, somewhere in there. But it's so hard to tell.
But you had a logbook, you logged them all down in? Or didn't you have to?
Some place there's a logbook, yeah, you had to log them out. And some place that book is, but I have no idea.
It's a hell of a lot of
Here's
hours,
the old
isn't it?
feathering button.
Because every flight you did, you were in the air probably, what, 12 hours, 18 hours?
No. On the missions, they only average about 7 hours. I suppose the longest was 9 hours and 20 minutes. That's the one where I came back and turned the park in the revetment. Remember how we'd swim around? And as I went with the outside engine, we ran out of gas.
How many times did you come back on 3, Al?
Well, you know, really not that many. Probably 3, 4 times. You know.
But no less than 3.
We had I would say, a minimum of 3. And I don't even remember.
But you didn't come back on 2 ever?
No, thank goodness. 2 with all of the turrets and everything else is a controlled glide. It isn't flying.
No.
Especially at altitude.
So they wouldn't have made a cross with 2.
Well.
And you don't often get a chance to interview an American lady who had a B-24 named after her. But here is Pat Dexter, who gave her name to Al's B-24, Pugnacious Princess Pat.
Where are you?
Here I am, David.
Oh, Pat in the B-24.
I'm getting instructions from the pilot.
Yeah. All right,
See?
I'll go through the checklist with you, baby. Okay.
Isn't this something? I was in this, you see, David, when I first saw it.
Yeah, it's like putting the clock back for you both, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Fuel tank valves.
Except he was a little thinner at that point.
Oh, it's
Isn't this
super.
great, though?
Radio man.
Wow.
Fire, throttle.
It brings back a lot of memories, Pat.
It sure does. Mercy me. I said he'd never be able to fly it because he was too small. Isn't this
Turned out to be
interesting?
And now let's have a look at just a few of the still photographs we took during that wonderful time that we had the crew of Diamond Lil staying in Norwich. And what wonderful memories they've left us with.
Isn't this something?
So here's the crew of Diamond Lil at that wonderful 2nd Air Division Memorial Room in the Central Library in Norwich, and I think this visit gave them a real taste for what the 50th anniversary year was all about. And inside the memorial there is Colonel Sam Mangrum and Colonel Ray Crottinger admiring the airfield key. And who can ever forget that wonderful evening with the Deputy Commander-in-Chief, Strike Command, Royal Air Force, Air Marshal Sir John Kemble and Lady Kemble at Merton House, High Wycombe. And here's the crew at Great Witchingham Hall, where they came to thank one of their main sponsors, Bernard Matthews. And then that wonderful morning we spent with Lotus Cars and Team Lotus, and the crew really enjoyed driving those wonderful cars. And we had to show them a Norfolk pub, and we gave them lunch at the Sal House Bell. Followed by that wonderful evening when they were guests of June and Edward Trafford at Broadhouse Wroxham. And of course the whole crew drove that lovely little steam locomotive on the Bure Valley Railway. This was the wonderful evening at the Muckleborough Collection, thanks to the kindness of Squadron Leader Berry Savory and his son Michael. And that evening too at Muckleborough, the Norfolk Vintage Pilots entertained the Diamond Lil crew to dinner, and John Perkins presented them with that wonderful Jaguar picture. This is now the Hotel Norwich, and Colonel Alan Strickland presents Tom Eaton, the chairman of the Memorial Trust of the 2nd Air Division, with the Diamond Lil picture. Al Dexter now at Hethel, looking for his dispersal of pugnacious Princess Pat. And although we couldn't find the dispersal, we found their wonderful base chapel, and the mural is still there. Al also found his favourite pub, the Bird in Hand. Lieutenant Al Dexter, United States Army Air Force, was the guest of honour at a dining-in night at Royal Air Force Cultural, and they really looked after him well. And the next day, Lieutenant Dexter tried a Jaguar of 41 Squadron for size. And so here's the entire crew outside their base while they stayed at Norwich, the wonderful Norwich Sport Village and Hotel in Broadland, and they really loved the village. And with them is David Wood, the General Manager. So let's now have a talk with one of the crew, Henry Brand, one of the flight engineers.
David, it's great to be here in Norwich. We had a fabulous trip over here, talking about the engine, the one that we changed in Keflavik. We've flown about 7 hours since then, and it's used 1 gallon of oil. The other 3 engines, the most any one of them is used since we left Fort Worth, which is about 26 hours of flying time, is 7 gallons.
That's wonderful. Well, I must admit it was great to have 3 super engineers on board. Fabulous.
I'll tell you, we all, including yourself, and Tom and Terry, and make a good crew, and we've enjoyed it immensely so far, and again I say we feel very proud and humbled to have it here.
Oh, it's super to be here. And that engine change, you did an engine change, I've never seen anything like it. That was a team effort, it really was.
It was a real team effort. 26.5 hours of physical work time. The crew had the engine on, and 34 hours after it dropped on the hangar floor, came in on a pallet. The engine was changed, we had done the run-up, and we had cleaned up our mess in the hangar that we had made while we were changing the engine.
And she ran perfectly all the way over.
Ran sweet as can be.
It really did. Thank you, Henry.
And so now the story is almost at an end as we join the Diamond Lil crew for their farewell supper at the Norwich Sport Village just prior to departure. Well, there it is. That's the end of the story, and we do hope that you've enjoyed it. Certainly, for me as a pilot, I could not have flown on a more happier or emotional flight than that one. And you also couldn't ask to fly with a better crew than the Confederate Air Force crew of Diamond Lil. They were really great friends and gave so much support to all of us in this whole project that we can never ever thank them enough. And certainly we in the Memorial Trust here in Norwich, in Norfolk, believe that this project did play a very vital part in ensuring that a proper tribute was paid to the 2nd Air Division in this, the 50th anniversary year of their arrival in Great Britain. Not only to those 6,400 young Americans who gave their lives fighting for freedom, flying from our East Anglian bases, but also to all the survivors of the 2nd Air Division. But we really can't end this film without, on behalf of the Memorial Trust of the 2nd Air Division, saying a sincere thank you to everybody who was involved in this project, because without your help, it would never have taken place. Firstly, of course, can we thank the international and national companies for all their great help, and Northwest Airlines. And then the United States Air Force, the United States Navy, and the Royal Air Force, and in particular 120 Squadron and the Nimrods, and 41 Squadron and the Jaguars from Royal Air Force Coltishall. And also the Deputy Commander-in-Chief of Royal Air Force Strike Command. Again, without all your support, the project would not have achieved all that it did. And next, of course, to all our local companies, for all the wonderful sponsorship and the support in so many ways that you gave us to ensure that this project took off. And finally, of course, to all those many, many individuals of all ages, young and old, who not only sponsored this flight, but also gave so much help on the ground, and especially at Norwich Airport, with all the ground support during Diamond Lil's stay at our airport. On behalf of the Memorial Trust, once again, a very sincere thank you to you all, because without your help, this project would never have happened. And finally, as a pilot, can I say it was great fun to fly, and something I will always remember. And all of us on the crew hope that you have enjoyed this film and enjoyed sharing some of those unique experiences with us in this 50th anniversary year of the arrival of the United States Army Air Force here in East Anglia. And so we now say farewell to Diamond Lil at Norwich Airport. And this aircraft and this crew will always be remembered by Norfolk people with pride and affection.
That was unbelievable also. But we were in Duncanville once, and how many times we've been back here. And just every time we come back here, it's the same.
This is really